Single dad turned down the CEO's dinner. She left a note that changed everything. They were still laughing when Owen Reyes walked through the gate. James Hadley leaned toward his wife Carol, pitched his voice at that specific volume that means it's designed to carry, and said, "Victoria's gone," and invited the help to her donor reception. Carol smiled into her champagne. Maybe she needed someone to explain the recycling bins. The garden party at Victoria Langford's estate occupied 4 acres of curated perfection. Stone paths, imported hedgerows, waitstaff in pressed white who moved like they'd been choreographed. It was the kind of gathering that Lakeview's established money used to remind itself it was established. Board members, investors, the kind of philanthropists who gave to causes they couldn't define. All of them had something to prove. All of them had proven it to the right people already. Owen Reyes walked through the gate holding a casserole dish covered in aluminum foil. He'd been invited by Victoria's assistant, who had not specified that a garden reception meant anything more than a polite neighborhood gathering. He dressed accordingly, clean button down, dark trousers he'd pressed that morning, shoes that had been good shoes before they'd done 3 years of real work. He stood at the entrance holding the casserole with the expression of a man taking stock of a situation without alarm. James Hadley nudged Carol. "That's the chemistry teacher. From the school." "Oh," Carol said. Her voice did what certain voices do, added a full paragraph of commentary without changing a single word. Oh. What James Hadley didn't know, what he had spent 45 minutes at this party not knowing, and would spend the rest of the evening not knowing, and would regret not having known for considerably longer after that, was that Owen Reyes held 3 active patents currently licensed to 12 pharmaceutical companies, including Meridian Health Technologies, Victoria Langford's company, the company that had made James Hadley's investment portfolio worth precisely what it was worth. By the time James understood that, the kind of quiet adjustment he preferred to make would no longer be available to him. But that was hours away. Right now, Owen was just a man with a casserole dish at a party that hadn't expected him. And that seemed like the simpler place to begin. 6 hours earlier, Owen Reyes had woken up to the sound of his daughter teaching calculus to the dog. The flashcards were Lily's own design, index cards, marker, careful drawings of curves and tangent lines that were technically accurate and aesthetically ambitious. She'd arranged them on the kitchen floor in a semicircle around Copernicus, a golden doodle who was 3 years old and deeply committed to breakfast over mathematics. "He's not learning," Lily reported when Owen appeared in the doorway. "Give him time. He might be processing. He's been processing since 6:15. Deep thinker. He's thinking about his bowl." To be fair, same. They made eggs. Lily scrambled while Owen managed the toast, a division of labor established after an incident in March that they still didn't formally discuss. Lily narrated the scrambling process with the authority of someone who had watched exactly enough cooking shows. Owen drank his coffee and listened and watched September light come through the kitchen window at the specific angle that only existed in the gap between summer and fall. He liked this hour. He'd built his whole life around being available for it. This was the life he had chosen, or more precisely, the life he had rebuilt carefully after the previous version had come apart at the seams. He'd met Diana at a conference in 2011, married her in 2013. Lily had arrived in 2014, early and small and immediately certain about everything. The research position at Penn was going well, pediatric drug delivery systems. Specifically the problem of getting the right molecules to the right places in bodies too small to tolerate standard doses. He had a team, a lab, a trajectory that people describe with words like groundbreaking and foundational. Then, Diana, had left, and the trajectory had required recalculation. Not dramatically. Not all at once. An 80-hour research week in sole custody of a 4-year-old was a math problem with a finite number of solutions. Owen had done the math, chosen the answer, and not spent much time looking back. He'd taken the teaching position at Lakeview High, App Chemistry, with a Thursday afternoon science club he'd started the year after, and hadn't been able to stop, because the kids kept being genuinely interesting. He consulted part-time under his small company, Reyes Scientific, reviewing proposals and advising on formulation problems for clients who found his name through academic papers that still circulated. 3 patents, maintained and licensed quietly, generated enough income that Lily's college account had a number in it he was proud of. He didn't talk about any of this, because it wasn't the kind of thing he talked about. He'd made the casserole that morning because Lily had told him to bring something to the new neighbor's party, and Lily's instructions were specific and non-negotiable. She helped with the measurements. She took measurements seriously, even when Copernicus didn't, and decorated the carrier bag with a sticker of a molecular structure she'd chosen because it was festive, but also scientific. The party invitation had come through Victoria's assistant, whom Owen had met briefly when Victoria moved in 6 months ago. He'd helped carry a bookshelf upstairs one afternoon because she couldn't get it through the landing alone, and no one else was around. She thanked him and offered coffee he didn't stay for. He'd filed her away as a neighbor, pleasant, seemingly busy. He hadn't Googled her. He drove to the party thinking about Lily's science fair project, which was due in 3 weeks, and involved a hypothesis about plant growth under different light spectra that was more ambitious than the rubric required. He thought this was entirely correct. He arrived to James Hadley's voice carrying across 4 acres of stone and hedgerow. The first 40 minutes were manageable. The garden was genuinely beautiful. Owen found the food table, set his casserole beside catering platters that had probably been arranged by a professional stylist, and accepted sparkling water from a passing waiter who treated every guest identically, which Owen appreciated. James Hadley found him 17 minutes in. "You're the teacher," James said, not a question. The settled tone of a man confirming a category. Chemistry, Lakeview High. James Hadley. The handshake told you something, if you were paying attention. I chair Meridian's board. Most of Victoria's people are here tonight. Nice to meet you. James looked at the casserole dish, looked back at Owen. Victoria invited you specifically? Her assistant, yes. The syllable had layers. And what's your connection to Meridian? To the research side? Peripheral, Owen said. James nodded with the patience of someone waiting for a punchline that hadn't arrived. Well, enjoy the party. He moved off. Found Carol. Said something Owen couldn't hear. Carol glanced over once. Owen ate a canap and thought about the Light Spectra project. Victoria Langford appeared at 20 past the hour, moving through her own party with the ease of someone comfortable with attention who doesn't require it. She was in her early 40s, dark hair, wearing something understated in a way that had probably required real effort. She spoke to 3 groups before she reached the food table, and the conversations were brief and genuine. She was actually listening, which was rarer than it should have been at parties like this. She reached the table and stopped. "You brought a casserole," she said. "My daughter told me to. To a catered event." She was very specific about it. Victoria looked at the dish, then at Owen, and did something unexpected. She laughed. "A real one. What's in it?" "Chicken and rice. Rosemary. It's a good one." "I believe you." She extended a hand. Victoria Langford. Owen Reyes. Something moved through her expression. Brief filed. "Sophie Park mentioned you. Her daughter's in your science club." She said, a pause. She said you were different from most people. She's generous, Owen said. What does Lily do? Teaches calculus to the Golden Doodle. Ongoing project. How's it going? The dog has views about breakfast. They're working through some foundational disagreements. They talked for 11 minutes. He clocked it later because it was the longest exchange he'd had with anyone at the party who wasn't carrying a tray. She asked real questions, follow-ups, specific ones, the kind that required actually listening. She asked about the science club, about his path. He gave her the abbreviated version, research, pen, the decision to step back. What made you choose that? She asked. The math didn't work. The hours in sole custody don't resolve. What did you prioritize? Lily, she looked at him the way people look at something they recognize but can't immediately place. Then James Hadley appeared at her shoulder. Victoria, the Bellamy group just arrived. They specifically wanted, one moment, James. They came from the city for, one moment. Said pleasantly, meant completely. James stepped back. Victoria turned back to Owen. I'm hosting a smaller dinner Friday. About 12 people. Industry, some research, people worth talking to. I'd like you to come. Owen thought about Friday for exactly as long as it took to remember what Friday was. Lily has her science fair presentation Friday, he said. I don't miss those. Victoria blinked. Oh, I appreciate the invitation. Of course. Another time then, James Hadley, 2 feet away, had heard the entire exchange. His expression moved through something and settled into a neutral he reassembled quickly. Owen said goodbye to Victoria, collected his now empty casserole dish. Someone had served it, which he found genuinely pleasing, and drove home. What Owen didn't know, backing out of the drive, was that James Hadley was already on his phone. That Carol was asking her contact in Victoria's office whether Owen Reyes had any real professional standing, or was just a neighbor who'd gotten lucky with an invitation, that by morning both of them would have decided he was a problem, not a threat, just an irritant. A complication in the social geometry of someone they needed to keep close. And that Victoria Langford, in her kitchen at 11:30 that night, was writing a note by hand. Owen found the envelope under his front door when he came downstairs at 6:15. Cream-colored, hand-addressed, his name in blue ink. He picked it up, made coffee, stood in his socked feet in the hallway and opened it. Owen, I've attended roughly 400 dinners in the past 12 years, investor meetings, board gatherings, launch events, charity galas. No one has ever turned one down for a school science fair. I've been thinking about that since last night, and I think it seemed important, though I'm not entirely sure I can explain why yet. I hope Lily's presentation goes the way she hopes it will. The chair will be here whenever you're ready. V. He read it twice. He thought about the phrase, I'm not entirely sure I can explain why yet. The honesty of it. The fact that she'd written it out by hand in the evening when she could have had an assistant send a text. He put the note on the kitchen counter. Made Lily's lunch. Packed her materials for school. Drove her to the drop-off line, listening to her review her presentation out loud. Hypothesis, methodology, data, conclusion, the section about control variables that she'd rewritten 4 times. You've got it, he told her at the curb. You'll be there? For the judging part? Front row. She got out, turned back once. Did you know there are 12 judges this year? 2 of them are actual scientists from the university. Then you're prepared for exactly the right audience. She smiled, the quick one that meant she was nervous and hiding it, and went in. Owen drove to school. Taught 2 sections of app chemistry. Sat in the parking lot at lunch and read the note again, which was sitting in his jacket pocket where he'd put it that morning without consciously deciding to. He didn't text Victoria. He wasn't sure what to say yet, but something in the note had shifted something, and he was honest enough with himself to notice that. What he didn't know was that James Hadley had also been busy. That he'd made 3 calls. That the Lakeview Business and Education Partnership Luncheon, scheduled for the following Thursday, a panel discussion James had helped design, had just added a public Q&A component, and that James had a very specific kind of public Q&A in mind. The luncheon was James Hadley's terrain. He'd sat on the planning committee for 4 years. He'd helped curate the panelists, shaped the agenda, suggested the venue. The discussion topic, bridging industry and academic research, was his idea, and it was a good one, insofar as it positioned him as a forward-thinking bridge builder who understood both worlds. He'd anticipated a pleasant afternoon. He had not anticipated that the moderator, Dr. Sandra Yee, would open the Q&A to the room. He had not anticipated that Owen would be in the audience, invited by the school's department chair as a representative of applied science education. He had not anticipated any of this, but he adapted quickly. Because adaptation was something James Hadley had always been good at, he leaned into the microphone with the ease of practice. "The honest challenge," James said, "is that there's a significant gap between research produced in academic settings and research that functions in the real world. Academics often don't understand commercial requirements. They produce interesting work. A pause. Weighted. What they rarely produce is viable work. With all due respect to our colleagues in education, the classroom is a different environment. And that's fine. But we should be careful not to confuse the two conversations." Several heads in the room turned. People who knew Owen was there, knew he was a teacher. James knew they knew. He'd checked the guest list. Owen sat with his hands flat on the table. His expression didn't change. Dr. Yee moved to the next question. Afterward, in the lobby, James located Owen with the purposefulness of a man who had decided something and was executing it. "No offense intended," James said. The tone was its own rebuttal. Just honest conversation about where expertise actually lives. Owen looked at him. Let the silence be exactly as long as it needed to be. "None taken," he said. "Good." James began to turn away. "James," Owen's voice was level. "What do you know about the Reyes-Noble formulation protocols?" James paused. The name landed somewhere. He wasn't sure where yet. "Should I?" he asked carefully. "Meridian's core delivery system is built on them. The patent holder is listed as Reyes Scientific." Owen picked up his jacket from the chair. "Enjoy the rest of the afternoon." He walked out. James stood in the lobby. His expression was the expression of a man whose map of a situation has just encountered terrain that wasn't on it. He called his attorney from the parking lot. Owen, in his car, called Lily. "How's the hypothesis holding?" he asked. "The blue spectrum seedlings are winning. By a lot. Then your data is clean." "Dad, they're winning by so much." "I think I was right. You usually are." He drove home. Made dinner. Thought about the note on the kitchen counter. Then he picked up his phone and typed Victoria Langford's number for the first time. "Lily placed first at the science fair. If the dinner invitation still stands, I'm available Saturday." Owen, her response came in 4 minutes. "Saturday, 7 p.m. Bring nothing this time." He looked at his phone for a moment. Put it down. Started on the dishes. The week had shifted. He could feel it. What he couldn't yet see was that by Tuesday morning, 3 days away, 3 things would happen at Meridian's board level that James Hadley had not planned for and would not be able to stop. But that was Tuesday. Tonight was just the dishes, and the note still on the counter, and Lily explaining her data to Copernicus with the confidence of someone who had already won. The dinner Saturday was 12 people. Smaller than Owen had imagined, or exactly as small as Victoria had intended. The room felt like a house rather than a showpiece. Books on shelves that had been read, not arranged. A dog audible somewhere in the back. Wine poured without ceremony. He was seated beside Dr. Priya Anand, Meridian's chief scientific officer, who was mid-story about a formulation problem her team had been wrestling with for 8 months when she paused, mid-sentence, and looked at Owen. "I'm sorry," she said. "What did you say your name was?" "Owen Reyes." Dr. Anand set down her fork. "Reyes Scientific," she said. Flat, like a fact arriving. "Yes, the Reyes Noble Protocols. Co-developed with a colleague at Penn, 2016. Dr. Anand was quiet for a moment. The table had gone partially still in the way tables do when a conversation shifts its register. James Hadley, seated 4 places down, had turned his head. "Those protocols," Dr. Anand said, choosing each word, "are the reason our Phase 2 trial succeeded. We spent 4 months before that trying to crack the delivery architecture and hitting a wall. Your framework gave us the approach. My team has cited the Reyes protocols in 7 internal papers. We've been trying to locate the research lead for 3 years. She stopped. I've wanted to find you for 3 years. The table was quiet. Victoria, at the head, had gone still, looking at Owen, then at James. James Hadley's color had moved through several stages. It had arrived somewhere pale and stayed there. Owen said to Dr. Anand, "I'm glad it was useful. The pediatric application was the priority, making sure the delivery could scale to smaller body mass without requiring adjusted dosing intervals." "It's not just the pediatric application," Dr. Anand said. "It's the entire delivery architecture. It's foundational." She turned down the table. "Victoria, do you know who you've been sitting across from?" Victoria looked at Owen. Her expression was not surprise. It was the expression of someone watching a thing they had already suspected be confirmed. "I had some sense of it," she said. "You knew?" James's voice came from 4 chairs away. Quiet, tightly controlled. "I ran the name after the garden party," Victoria said. Simply, Reyes Scientific came up immediately. "The patents are public record." She looked at James with an expression that was completely calm. "I'm not sure why you'd assume I hadn't." James opened his mouth. A sound came out that was not quite a word. He closed it. Dr. Anand turned back to Owen. "We have a proposal that's been sitting on my desk for 6 months. A formulation problem we haven't been able to crack. I've been waiting to find someone with the right background to consult on it. Would you be willing to send it Monday?" Owen said. "I'll read it over the week." The conversation resumed around the table, slowly at first, then fully. The evening continued. James Hadley ate the rest of his meal in a silence that no one interrupted, because no one needed to. His investment position in Meridian was intact. That couldn't be touched. But the weight that came with the board chair title, the specific influence it added to his name in rooms exactly like this one, Owen watched him understand that it had become lighter, in the space of 30 seconds, than it had been in years. Later, when the guests had gone, Victoria walked Owen to the door. He stopped on the step. "You knew when you wrote the note." "Yes, that's why you wrote it." "No," she said it without hesitation. "I wrote the note because you turned down a dinner for a science fair. I already knew about the patents. That's not why the note happened." She looked at him directly. "I wrote it because I have been to 400 dinners, and I have never been turned down for something that actually mattered, and it felt important to say something about that." Owen was quiet for a moment. "It's still on my counter." "Why?" "Because of the part where you said you weren't sure you could explain why yet." He looked at her. "I wanted to see if you could." Victoria considered this. "I think what I was trying to say was that I'd been optimizing for the wrong outcomes. For a long time." A pause. "You seemed like evidence that other outcomes were possible. What kind?" "The kind where the right things get prioritized." She said it carefully. "I'm still working out what that looks like, practically, but I think I'm getting closer." He drove home. Lily was asleep, one arm over Copernicus, who had apparently decided that the foot of Lily's bed was an acceptable alternative to the kitchen floor. The note was on the counter where he'd left it. The blue ink still unhurried, still exact. The consequences, meanwhile, had already begun their sequence. By Tuesday morning, Meridian's general counsel would complete a routine compliance audit and find something in James Hadley's conduct that required disclosure. By Wednesday, Dr. Anand's proposal would arrive in Owen's inbox, 47 pages, dense and specific, and genuinely interesting. By Thursday, a board vote would take place that James had not anticipated and could not reverse. But that was Tuesday. The compliance finding came from Meridian's general counsel, not from Owen, and not from Victoria. It was standard audit procedure, the kind James had moved through a dozen times without incident. This time, the audit flagged a pattern: repeated efforts by the board chair to exclude an active patent licensor from advisory conversations, combined with undisclosed personal financial commentary made about that individual to members of the board. The council's report ran 14 pages. The summary ran 3 sentences. Conduct inconsistent with fiduciary duty. Appearance of improper influence. Recommendation: removal, pending full review. The board voted Thursday. 7-2. James Hadley cleaned out his corner office by 5 o'clock. He called 4 board members. 2 didn't answer. A third told him, carefully, that the decision had been about documented conduct and not about him personally, and wished him well, and ended the call before he could respond. The fourth said nothing he could use. His investment position stayed intact. The portfolio didn't change. But the board chair title, the committee influence, the particular gravity it added to his name in rooms he'd spent 20 years building access to, gone. Carol's consequence was quieter, which in some ways made it more difficult. No formal letter arrived. What arrived instead was a slow rearrangement, planning meetings whose calendar invites seemed to go to old email addresses. Events where her usual seat was occupied by someone who'd moved up in the committee. The specific experience of watching a social architecture you helped build decide to rebuild around a different footprint. She called James's attorney once. The attorney said what attorneys say when the answer is no. Owen heard about the board vote from Victoria, who called on Monday morning and told him plainly, without drama. He nodded. "I hope he uses the time well," he said, and meant it without irony, which Victoria found, as she told Dr. Anand later, to be one of the more remarkable things about him. Dr. Anand's proposal arrived Monday at 11. Owen read it at lunch. Called her Tuesday afternoon. They talked for 50 minutes. By the end of the week, a consulting arrangement was in place. Part-time, flexible, built around the school schedule and the Thursday Science Club. He told Lily he'd be doing some work with a company that made medicine for children. Lily produced a list. She wants them to fix the taste of liquid antibiotics, Owen told Victoria over coffee the following Saturday. The grape flavors, specifically. She has written concerns. She's not wrong, Victoria said. The grape flavor is indefensible. I've said this internally for 2 years. I've passed her notes to Dr. Anand. Is Anand taking them seriously? She scheduled a follow-up. Victoria smiled. Outside, October had properly arrived. The coffee was hot. Copernicus was somewhere under the table, hoping for something, as Copernicus always was. The Saturday coffee had become a standing arrangement. Not announced, not formalized, just arrived at. The way things do when they make sense, and neither person has a reason to question them. Sometimes at Victoria's, sometimes at the cafe near Owen's school, once at a trail Lily had researched and selected with the thoroughness of someone who took route optimization seriously. The progression was slow and real, and entirely unhurried, which suited them both. Two people who had each lost something and rebuilt something, and were now, carefully, building something new. Lily's official position was that this was going well and should continue. She had communicated this to her grandmother, her school friend Rosie, and, once, to Copernicus, who had listened with his full attention and then looked at his bowl. Owen kept the note in the kitchen drawer. Not on the counter anymore, moved there the day Victoria had written the second one, which was shorter and said simply, "Lily was right about the antibiotics. We're doing a flavor study. She should know." He'd kept that one too. Both of them. In the drawer. In order. Some things get better in ways that don't make a sound. You look up on an ordinary morning, Lily narrating breakfast, Copernicus hoping for something, light through the kitchen window at the angle only October makes, and the math has changed. More in the column that matters, less in the one that doesn't. Owen looked up one morning and thought, this is it. This, exactly, was it. Not a destination, not the end of something hard, just the accumulated weight of right choices, stacked carefully, one true piece at a time. He was good at this kind of building. He'd just forgotten, for a while, that he was allowed to build things that were only for himself. He was remembering now.